my CEO wife, Willow, was just throwing a tantrum and slept in the guest room for one night. Who would have thought that the next day, I'd take 80 million and disappear without a trace? She frantically called my phone, only to hear her father, Martin, pick up. All he said, coldly, was, "George already divorced you." That money was the compensation I promised him for wasting his youth. Willow froze. "What do you mean? I didn't even know George and I got divorced," Martin replied flatly. "I prepared the divorce papers before your wedding. All it needed was his signature to take effect." Even after hearing it from her own father, Willow still refused to believe that I, someone who loved her so deeply, would ever walk away. But what she never imagined was that 3 years ago, her parents had come to me first and offered me a contract. Stay by Willow's side for 3 years. Obey her. Keep her safe. And they would find the best doctors to treat my terminally ill sister. Plus, they'd give me a youth compensation fund. Chapter 1. Your sister's awake. There are 4 days left on our contract. The remaining payment will be transferred to your account by then. Those words filled me with excitement. I sincerely said, "Thank you." 3 years ago, Willow's parents found me and signed a contract with me. All I had to do was stay by her side, obey her. And after 3 years, they'd cure my sister and give me enough money to live a stable life. I agreed without hesitation. Even though Willow was hard to deal with, my efforts weren't in vain. In just 5 more days, I would finally be reunited with my only remaining family. Right then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Willow. It simply read, "Come to Onette Herd." I paused for a second. Onette Herd was the name of a bar Willow often visited. I clenched my phone. Martin, seeing my reaction, understood it was from his daughter and told me to head out. I left the classical-style villa. It was so remote. I had to walk for quite a while before I finally got a cab. As soon as I got in, Willow messaged again, urging me to hurry. I simply replied, "Almost there," and turned off my phone. Half an hour later, I arrived at the bar. I pushed open the private room door, and Willow spotted me immediately. She frowned, annoyed at my lateness. "You crawl here or something? Even a pig would have gotten here faster." I'd heard stuff like that from her for 3 years now. I was immune. Next to Willow sat Makoto, who hooked his arm around hers and pretended to speak kindly. Maybe something came up. Willow shot back. What could he possibly be doing? He spends every damn day hovering around me. I'm sick of it. She sounded genuinely irritated. The people around her laughed and teased. "You don't know how lucky you are." Willow just scoffed at their words. I stayed silent. After all, she wasn't wrong. My job was literally to orbit her life. Suddenly, there was a commotion downstairs. Everyone's attention was drawn to the main hall. It was a drinking contest. Whoever won would get a limited edition bracelet. "I want that," Makoto suddenly said. Willow responded. "All right, I'll get it for you," she replied dotingly, then turned her eyes to me. "You go win that bracelet for Makoto." I glanced downstairs. There were a lot of participants, most of them with way better tolerance than me. I hesitated, then turned to Willow and said, "I only do things for you. Other people don't concern me." The contract only required me to stay with Willow, protect her, and obey her. It didn't say I had to serve others. I could refuse, but Willow insisted. "Then I'm asking you to do it for me." She leaned back into the couch, eyes proud, lips curled in amusement. "And what? You gonna say no to me?" Our eyes locked. She already knew the answer. Of course I wouldn't say no. I loved her so much I'd die for her. How could I reject such a small request? So, I said nothing, and went downstairs to sign up for the drinking contest. The bartender looked at me in disbelief, asking several times if I was serious. I nodded each time, because this was simply what I owed her. Chapter 2. The moment the competition began, the crowd erupted in cheers. I said nothing, silently downing drink after drink. By the end, only one opponent remained. He finally gave up, impressed by my stubbornness. I didn't even know how many drinks I'd had. My body had gone on autopilot, repeating the same motion over and over. It wasn't until the bartender called out that I realized I'd won. Hands trembling, I took the bracelet box from him and stumbled upstairs. Under everyone's gaze, I walked up to Willow and held out the box. "The bracelet you wanted." Willow frowned at how unsteady I looked, my eyes dazed and body swaying. For some reason, her chest tightened with a strange emotion. It wasn't until I moved the box a little closer that she snapped out of it, then brusquely avoided my hand. She carefully placed the bracelet on Makoto's wrist. Makoto looked down at it and asked, "Willow, does it look good?" Willow stared at the bracelet, and my disheveled, pathetic image flashed through her mind. Annoyance surged. She ripped the bracelet off. "Ugly. Don't wear such cheap stuff. I'll buy you a better one another day." Just like that, the bracelet I had nearly drunk myself to death to win was tossed to the floor without a care. I lowered my eyes, crouched down, and picked it up silently. Then I said, "I'm going to the restroom." She didn't even turn her head, probably didn't hear me. I didn't say anything more and headed for the bathroom, steadying myself against the wall. The moment I got there, I vomited uncontrollably. It felt like I was puking my guts out, like I was about to cough up my soul. When I was done, I dragged myself to the sink and stared into the mirror. My hair was a mess, my face red and bloated. I let out a bitter laugh. How did I end up like this? I splashed some water on my face, tidied myself up, and headed back to the private room, only to find it completely empty. They were gone. I didn't know if they forgot me on purpose or by accident. Not that it mattered. Honestly, I was relieved. No need to keep dealing with Willow. Outside, it was already dark. The wind cut through my alcohol-damp clothes, chilling me to the bone. I hugged my arms and pulled out my phone to call a cab, but it was dead, shut off completely, so I just walked home along the roadside. 2 hours later, I finally made it back. Lights blazed inside the house. Willow was sitting right in the center of the living room. As soon as she saw me, her face twisted into mockery. Where the hell were you? Coming home this late? What? Stayed for round 2 with someone at the bar? Her tone made it sound like I was some sleazy player. I felt sick to my stomach. I said calmly, "My phone died." I walked home. Willow clearly didn't believe me. She scoffed. "Yeah, sure you did." Then she stood and headed upstairs, tossing behind her, "You reek of booze. Don't come upstairs to sleep." That stench of alcohol. It was for her, but I didn't dare disobey. I took a shower downstairs, grabbed a blanket, and fell asleep on the couch. The next day, I actually slept in a little, woken up by Willow's call. As soon as I answered, she issued a command: "Make lunch for 2 and bring it to the office. Be quick." Then she hung up, giving me no room to refuse. Not that I ever had a choice. I lay on the couch for a few seconds before pushing myself up. The moment I stood, my head spun. I knew clearly, I'd caught a cold. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Willow. She listed a few dishes, all ones Makoto liked. At the end, she gave me a time limit, 40 minutes. I didn't even have time to take medicine. I just got up and went to the kitchen. Even though I cooked as fast as I could, it still took longer than 40 minutes. Once I arrived at the company, I rushed toward Willow's office. Passing through the work area, I caught bits of gossip. "He's here again, trying to kiss up to President Liu. What a simp." "Right, Mr. Ito's back, and it's obvious she only has eyes for him. And this George still won't back off." I didn't take any of it to heart. I reached her office door, and the moment I opened it, Willow's voice snapped at me in anger. Chapter 3. She snapped. "I told you 40 minutes. Do you know how late you are? Makoto's starving. Can you take responsibility for that?" Sure, I was late, but it was exactly noon, lunchtime. Unless Makoto skipped breakfast, there's no way he was starving. I placed the lunchbox on her desk without a word and turned to leave. "Did I say you could go?" Willow barked. "Lay the dishes out." Another command. I took a deep breath, turned around, and obediently began setting the food out one by one. Sometimes, I really wondered if Willow's parents had hired me just to be her full-time nanny. She acted like a spoiled, oversized baby, demanding I do everything for her, from meals to daily chores. As soon as the dishes were arranged, Willow added, "Go get me a coffee." I nodded and headed out. Just as I left the office, I heard Makoto's voice. "Willow, I'll come too." I didn't look back, just kept walking to the coffee machine. Makoto came and stood beside me, casually said, "Even though you're married to Willow, you do know she's always loved me, right?" I ground the coffee beans without looking at him. Of course I knew. I knew the day I married her. Makoto, mistaking my silence for defiance, frowned, thinking I was provoking him. I ignored him, finished making the coffee, and carried it back to the office. Didn't even acknowledge Makoto or the flash of resentment in his eyes. At the door, I reached to open it, but Makoto suddenly sped up, brushing past and slamming his shoulder into me. Shit. Scalding coffee splashed all over my hand. The burning pain hit instantly, sharp and unbearable. Willow, who had been looking at documents, jumped up when she heard Makoto's voice and ran over to hold him protectively. "Makoto, are you okay? Did you get burned?" Makoto sniffled, looking all pitiful. "Willow, it's not George's fault. I wasn't careful." He didn't even finish the sentence, but it was more than enough for Willow to assume the worst. She turned to me with sharp eyes, then shoved me hard. My head was still foggy with fever, so I couldn't steady myself. I crashed into the half-closed door and fell backward, landing outside the office, the remaining coffee in the cup poured over me. "You did it on purpose, didn't you? So jealous all the time," Willow shouted. "Get the hell out." Her yelling drew attention. People from nearby desks gathered to see the drama. After yelling at me, Willow turned around and wrapped her arms around Makoto, slamming the door shut in my face. With everyone around me whispering and smirking, I pushed myself off the floor, covered in coffee stains and pain. Then I left. When I got home, I ordered burn cream and cold medicine from a delivery app. After using them, I carefully stored them in a little box I kept just for meds. The box was already half full: burn ointments, painkillers, cough syrups, all things I'd accumulated over the past year. That evening, Willow came home while I was applying a second round of burn cream. Seeing what I was doing, she paused while taking off her shoes. Then she walked over and said, "I checked the security footage. I know it wasn't on purpose, but Makoto has sensitive skin. He bruises easily. You should be more careful next time." I almost laughed. Was she saying it didn't matter if I got hurt, because I had thick skin? I said nothing. She thought I was upset, and gently took the cream from my hand to apply it for me. She held my hand. I froze, surprised. It wasn't until I felt the cold ointment that I realized she was really tending to my wound. My head was spinning with questions when her phone rang. The villa was dead quiet. I could clearly hear Makoto's whiny voice on the other end. "Willow, my head hurts. I feel like I'm gonna throw up. Will you come be with me?" I felt her hand slowly tighten around mine. The pain made my brows furrow, but Willow didn't notice. Her face filled with worry. "Wait for me, Makoto. I'll be there soon." "Okay, just hang in there." Then she suddenly threw my hand aside, slamming it onto the coffee table, and rushed out the door. A sharp, gut-wrenching pain exploded in my hand. I groaned from it, but Willow didn't even look back. She slammed the door behind her. The sound echoed in the empty living room. I sat there holding my hand for a long time before the pain dulled. Then I laughed at myself. How stupid, to think Willow might still show me a little tenderness. What a joke. Chapter 4. After finishing the ointment, I didn't feel sleepy at all, so I started packing up the few things that belonged to me. I had never really treated this place as my home, so I didn't own much, just enough to fill a small suitcase. When I finished packing, I sat on the couch and stared at the garden full of blooming flowers outside. They were all planted by me. Gardening was the only hobby life hadn't stripped away from me. The first time I started planting, Willow mocked me. "So you really think this is your home, huh?" Back then, I just quietly stared at the flowers and said nothing. I never thought of this place as home. I just needed something to cling to, something comforting enough to help me get through these 3 years. After that, Willow never commented on my gardening again, so I filled the whole yard with flowers. But now that I was about to leave, these flowers only seemed like an eyesore. I thought for a moment, then went outside, and started pulling them out. 3 years of flowers, gone in less than 4 hours. By the time I was done, the sky had already begun to brighten. Looking at the bare, empty garden, I finally returned to the villa and took a shower. Just as I was about to lie down and get some sleep, my phone rang. Willow's name flashed across the screen. I unconsciously tightened my grip on the phone. Before the call could end, I picked up. Willow said, "Bring me a jacket. I'll send you the address." As usual, she hung up right after giving her order. I stared at the blacked-out screen, a little confused. Why did I have to deliver it? Then I figured it out. She probably just liked bossing me around. I grabbed a jacket and got in the car. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my chest, tight, breathless, but it passed quickly, so I didn't think much of it. When I arrived, I realized the location was an aquarium. Willow's assistant was waiting at the entrance and led me inside. The entire aquarium was empty, clearly rented out. We went up a flight of stairs. There, I saw Willow and Makoto kneeling by the open top of a tank, playing with the dolphins. I walked over and quietly handed her the jacket. Willow glanced at me, then said, "You're pretty fast today." She immediately draped the jacket over Makoto. "He caught a cold and insisted on coming here. Hurry and put it on before you get worse." Makoto smiled. "But I've got you, right? You'd never let me get sick." Willow nodded. Suddenly, Makoto gasped. "My bracelet." Turns out a dolphin had snatched it right off his wrist. Willow tried to soothe him. "It's okay, I'll buy you a new one." But Makoto wouldn't have it. "No, that was your first gift to me. It's different." "Fine, George." Willow sighed, smiling wryly, without turning around. Certain I wouldn't say no, she said. "I heard you used to do underwater shows at aquariums, right? Getting a bracelet back from a dolphin shouldn't be a big deal for you. Go get it." My chest tightened. Yes, I had, back then, to pay for my sister's medical bills. I'd done every kind of job I could find. It had been a long time since I last dove underwater, but even so, I couldn't refuse her. I floated at the surface and took a deep breath. A sharp pain suddenly shot through my chest, but Willow was still urging me on, so I dove in. I used to double as a dolphin trainer, so they were familiar with me. Luckily, the dolphin was only playing, it hadn't swallowed the bracelet. I retrieved it without much trouble, just as I was about to resurface. Though, the dolphin thought I was playing and started nudging me repeatedly with its snout. My movements slowed. Maybe it was the sleepless night, or maybe the lingering cold, but my strength was fading fast. As I finally broke the surface, everything went black. I passed out, still clutching the bracelet tightly in my hand. Just before I lost consciousness, I felt a pair of strong hands pull me up, supporting me, holding me. Who? It must be one of the staff, I thought groggily. Chapter 5. In the hospital room, I lay unconscious on the bed. Willow and Mrs. Lu sat on the couch nearby. Mrs. Lu had come in for a routine checkup and just happened to see me being wheeled into the hospital, so she stopped by to check on me. The doctor held my chart and said, "It's nothing serious, just a combination of lack of sleep, a cold, and physical exhaustion." Mrs. Lu let out a sigh of relief. After all, I was the one she had brought into her daughter's life. Looking at George's pale lips, Mrs. Lu couldn't help but feel puzzled. In her memory, Willow had never been this harsh. What had changed? Eventually, she couldn't help but ask, "Willow, what's going on? There are only 2 days left. Why would you let him end up like this?" Willow frowned and cut her off. "Mom, what do you mean 2 days?" Mrs. Lu immediately realized she'd slipped. She laughed awkwardly. "Oh, nothing, just talking nonsense." Willow, sensing something was off, was about to press further when her phone rang. She answered it, and without another word, turned and left the hospital room. I woke up sometime later. Mrs. Lu was still there. I blinked at her in surprise. She looked uncomfortable, then said, "My daughter." "I'm sorry," I interrupted her softly. "It's fine. I'm only doing this to get what I want." She paused, clearly not expecting such a direct response. A clean break. Seeing me turn away, she didn't say anything else and quietly left the room. I heard the door shut behind her, turned my head, and still feeling a little drowsy, fell back asleep. When I opened my eyes again, it was already dark outside. I picked up my phone and saw a new social post from Makoto. The photo showed a delicate bracelet. His caption read, "The dolphin ruined the first one, so she immediately got me another. If you find a woman like that, marry her." I could guess. The bracelet I nearly drowned getting was already thrown away. I gave a bitter little smirk. Just then, I received a video. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was my sister. She was doing physical therapy, clearly sent to me by the Lu family. I saved the video instantly, watching it again and again as tears streamed silently down my face. And that's when Willow's voice suddenly came from behind me. "Who's that?" Startled, I fumbled to hide my phone and wiped my tears. Willow's expression was dark, impatient. She reached out like she was going to snatch the phone. "I'm asking you, who is this woman? Answer me." It was the first time I'd seen her like this. I held onto my phone tightly and replied as calmly as I could. "Just a college classmate." She didn't react, so I added, "We haven't spoken in years." Only then did Willow's expression soften slightly. She held out her hand and said, "Well, if you haven't kept in touch, that means she's not important. Delete the video. Give me your phone, I'll do it." Afraid she might get suspicious, I handed her the phone, and watched her delete the video. Afterward, she returned to her usual cold self. "Pack up, I'm taking you home." I was stunned. She was picking me up from the hospital. Willow pressed again. "Hurry, I'm waiting at the entrance." Once I got dressed and went downstairs, I opened the back door of her car, but Willow snapped. "You think I'm your driver? Sit in the front." I closed the door and moved to the passenger seat. On the drive home, she suddenly asked, "What happened to the flowers in the garden?" I hesitated, so she had already been home. I casually replied, "I didn't want them anymore, so I pulled them out." She gave a mocking laugh. "Really thought it was your house? Huh? Plant whatever you want. Yank it out when you feel like it, doing whatever you please," I quietly said. "I never thought of it that way. What I meant was, this was never my home. My real home was wherever my sister was." But Willow misunderstood. She thought I meant I never expected to live freely. She scoffed and said nothing more. The rest of the ride was silent. When we arrived, I was surprised to see someone else in the house. Willow casually mentioned, "Makoto's staying here for a few days." She didn't even bother asking for my opinion. Not that she had to. I was just a guest here. I had no right to object. I nodded quietly. Makoto suddenly stood up and asked, "George, you don't mind, right?" Before I could answer, Willow cut in. "He doesn't get to mind. Just treat this like your own home." I lowered my head and gave a self-deprecating smile. To me, it's don't treat it like home. To Makoto, it's make yourself at home the moment you arrive. The difference between being loved and unloved couldn't be clearer, but it's all right. It won't be long now. Soon, I'll be out of their way for good. Chapter 6. Makoto moved in just like that. Strangely, even after he did, Willow didn't move to another room. She still slept in the same bed as me, but I didn't think too much of it. On the final day, when I woke up, Willow was already gone. As I stepped out of the bedroom, I saw Makoto standing in the hallway, staring at a painting on the wall. I tried to walk past him and head downstairs, but Makoto called out to me. He said, I thought with the way Willow treated you, you would have left long ago. Didn't expect you to last this long. Should I call that loyalty? He turned and circled me, like I was some strange creature he'd never seen before. She used to tell me how much you loved her, he said. I didn't believe it back then, but now, I do. Who else would keep loving someone after being treated like this? And yet, you did. I frowned, not sure what he was trying to get at. Then he continued. Too bad it's all for nothing. She doesn't love you. She never did. You've known that all along, haven't you? I felt nothing. Of course I knew, but I couldn't understand why he kept repeating it, almost like he was trying to convince himself. Makoto stopped circling and stood right in front of me. So, he said, what do you think Willow will do if she finds out you pushed me down the stairs? My expression darkened. What are you talking about? I didn't push you. Makoto smirked. No, not yet. But that's about to change. At that moment, I heard the front door open downstairs. Makoto took 2 steps back, and suddenly fell backward, down the stairs. I instinctively reached out, tried to grab him, but caught nothing. That was the moment Willow walked in. She saw Makoto lying at the bottom of the stairs and immediately rushed over, cradling him in her arms. Still, he was hurt. She picked him up and ran up the stairs toward the bedroom. At the landing, she slammed into me with her shoulder, knocking me aside. Through the crack in the door, I saw Makoto glance at me behind her back. His eyes gleamed with smug satisfaction. He even smiled. I stared, stunned. I hadn't thought he'd go that far just to frame me. Then, noticing my expression, Makoto dropped the smile and replaced it with a look of pain and restraint. He looked at Willow and said, "Don't blame George." "Okay, I provoked him first. He didn't mean to push me." Willow frowned. "You always do this. That's why people take advantage of you. Just wait here. I'll get the doctor." She stood up and walked out of the room, shutting the door behind her, then headed straight toward me. Step by step, I backed away until I was pressed against the wall. Willow didn't say a word. She grabbed my wrist and started dragging me downstairs. I struggled, but her grip didn't loosen one bit. Halfway down the stairs, I slipped and fell, pain shooting through every inch of my body. But she didn't stop. She dragged me all the way down to the first-floor guest bedroom, right in front of the wardrobe. When I realized she was trying to lock me inside, panic filled my chest. I clung tightly to the doors, begging. "Willow, it wasn't me. I didn't push him. He fell on purpose." During the worst period of my life, I lived in a basement, dark, damp, full of rats. Ever since I moved out, I'd never been able to stand small, confined spaces, and now she was going to lock me in one even smaller. But Willow didn't believe a word I said. Without hesitation, she pried my fingers off the doors one by one, shoved me in, and slammed the wardrobe shut. I heard the click as she jammed a wooden stick through the handle to keep it closed. Darkness swallowed me instantly. Cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I banged on the door, screaming, "Willow, Willow, let me out. I can't stay in here." But there was no response, not a sound outside. Eventually, I had no strength left. I slid down, leaning weakly against the door, curling into myself and hugging my knees. In my ears, I imagined the drip of water, the squeaking of rats. For a moment, it felt like I was right back in that basement, trapped in the same pitch-black hell, weighed down by endless part-time jobs and a mountain of critical hospital notices. It was a long time before the panic began to ease. The sounds in my ears faded. Reality returned. My sister was doing rehabilitation now. Those days were already behind me. Chapter 7. I didn't know how much time had passed before the cabinet door was finally opened. Light poured in and I raised my hand to shield my eyes. Willow froze. The person in front of her had disheveled hair, pale lips, and a forehead covered in cold sweat. She hadn't expected it to be this serious. She had only meant to give me a little punishment. An inexplicable ache rose in her chest. After a moment's hesitation, she bent down to help me up, but as soon as she touched me, I flinched violently, like I was trying to escape a murderer. Annoyance surged in her heart. Her face darkened, and she roughly dragged me out. She scolded. "Makoto came to stay at our house, and I didn't think you'd be so upset. I can't believe you tried to hurt him. Do you even know that's a crime?" I was pulled up without resistance. I no longer had the energy or desire to explain. After all, today was the last day. No matter how she misunderstood me, I'd be leaving tomorrow. Seeing me so indifferent only fueled her anger. She dragged me all the way to Makoto's room. The doctor had just left, and there was still ointment on the table. Willow threw me onto the floor. Every inch of my body ached. Then Willow spoke coldly. "Apply the medicine for Makoto." I didn't want to fight anymore. I obediently picked up the ointment. But then Willow added, "On your knees." I looked at her in disbelief. Willow returned my gaze with a cold expression. In her heart, she thought, if George just begs a little, I'll let him off the hook. But I simply stared at her for a few seconds, stunned, and then said, word by word, "Willow, This is the last time." Before she could figure out what I meant, I turned away and began applying the ointment to Makoto. Now it was Willow who froze. I paid no attention to her. I was only thinking about finally getting to see my sister. Willow didn't even wait for me to finish applying the medicine. She shoved me out of the room. Staring at the closed door, I let out a breath of relief. It's finally over, I thought. I didn't care what was happening in there. I went back to my room, packed the last of my things into my suitcase. Tomorrow, all I had to do was visit Willow's father, and everything would be finished, because I would finally be seeing my sister. I barely slept all night. Willow didn't return to the bedroom either. At the first light of dawn, I couldn't wait any longer and dragged my suitcase downstairs. Thankfully, Willow was still asleep. At the Liu family's old residence, Martin handed me divorce papers. He said, "Sign this, and from now on, you and Willow will have nothing to do with each other." Without hesitation, I took the pen and signed my name. Then Martin gave me a plane ticket, a new phone, and a bank card. He said, "Once you land, someone will pick you up and take you to reunite with your sister." I placed my old phone on the table and thanked him as I took the items. "Thank you." Even though this was a transaction, the Liu family had saved my sister's life. Gratitude was still due. Before leaving the Liu residence, I thought of Willow and paused. I turned to Martin, who was sitting on the sofa, and said, "I have one last request. Please don't tell Willow where I've gone." Martin didn't understand why I would ask this, but he agreed, relieved. I left the Liu residence like I was escaping, and boarded the flight home. Liu residence. Martin sat at the tea table, finishing his tea. He walked over to the trash bin with George's old phone, about to throw it away when it suddenly began to vibrate violently. The name flashing on the screen, Willow. Chapter 8. Martin answered the call, and Willow's voice immediately burst out from the other end. "Where did you go so early in the morning? Why aren't you home?" She had spent the whole night restless in the guest room after angrily pushing George back to their bedroom. This morning, she'd come out wanting to speak to him, only to find the room empty. She searched the house and couldn't find him anywhere. A strange sense of panic began to rise within her, prompting the call. Martin said calmly, "Mr. Wang has already left." Hearing her father's voice, Willow paused. "What?" Martin didn't beat around the bush. "Mr. Wang has already divorced you. There's no need to look for him anymore. Now you can be with whomever you want." Willow didn't understand what he meant, and before he could say more, she hung up the phone. The word divorce kept echoing in her mind, but she didn't believe it. She searched the house again, and this time, she noticed a few things were missing. George's things. There hadn't been many to begin with, so it was hard to notice at first. Now that she realized some of his belongings were gone, and that his phone was somehow with her father, dread crept in. She changed her clothes and quickly walked out. Just as she reached the stairs, Makoto came out of his room and blocked her path. "Willow, where are you going in such a hurry? I want you to have breakfast with me." He clung to her arm affectionately. Before, Willow would have dropped everything to be with him, but now her mind was filled with George. Annoyed, she pushed him away. "Eat by yourself." She drove close to the speed limit the entire way to the old residence. Inside, Martin was sitting in the living room, unsurprised to see her arrive, though he hadn't expected her to be this anxious. Willow spoke. "Dad, what did you mean on the phone, and why do you have George's phone?" She didn't waste time on greetings. Martin didn't answer directly. He bent down and pulled out the divorce papers from under the coffee table and placed them in front of her. "Mr. Wang has already signed. If you sign your name too, the divorce will be official." Seeing the divorce papers, Willow finally realized her father was serious, but she didn't believe George would actually divorce her. She snatched the papers and flipped to the last page. George's signature was already there. Her eyes filled with disbelief. She threw the papers back on the table and shouted, "Where is George? He wouldn't divorce me. You must have forced him." In her mind, she believed her father had looked down on George's background and pressured him into leaving. Martin had expected her not to believe it, but he hadn't anticipated this reaction. After a moment of hesitation, he told her the truth. 2 years ago, a fortune teller said you'd suffer a life-threatening calamity. So we found someone whose birth chart matched yours, Mr. Wang, and made an agreement. I would provide him with the resources to save someone in exchange for marrying you and staying by your side for 2 years. Today, the contract has expired. He's gone. Willow's heart trembled, but she still couldn't believe it. George loved her too much. He wouldn't do this. She clenched her lips. "No, that's not possible. George loved me. You're lying to me. I don't believe it." Martin sighed. "Think about the way you treated him. If there was no benefit, why would he stay with you for so long? Love isn't that noble." Willow, in that moment, her mind went blank. She thought about everything she'd done to George over the past year, her mother's words in the hospital, and finally, last night, George saying the last time. When the fog cleared, she finally saw the truth in his eyes. His gaze had been focused, but void of love, only patient tolerance, like one would give to a client. No, no way. That calm gaze echoed in her mind. Her defenses began to crumble, but all she could do was whisper over and over again, no, no way. Chapter 9. Martin understood her disbelief, but he still got up, went upstairs, and brought the contract down to place it in front of her. Looking at the agreement before her, Willow could no longer deceive herself. In that instant, every trace of false hope shattered to dust. Rage surged in her chest. She clutched the document tightly, her eyes red with fury, and shouted, "You're all lying to me, every one of you." The paper made only the faintest sound as it hit the floor. Martin, sitting across from her, simply watched her calmly. He had always known that his daughter had a terrible temper, spoiled and immature, so her outburst was no surprise. But the way she now reacted about George left him somewhat puzzled. "You're all lying to me," Willow murmured. Her head was swimming with anger. Suddenly, she looked up and questioned her father. "Where's George? You know where he is, don't you? Tell me." Martin didn't mind her disrespectful tone. Keeping his promise, he didn't tell her George's whereabouts. After a pause, he offered a piece of advice. "These past 2 years, he's done quite a lot for you. Just sign the papers and let it end peacefully. I see you're quite fond of that Makoto guy. If you want to marry him, I won't object." But Willow didn't listen to a single word. Before leaving, she took George's old phone and the divorce agreement, leaving only one line behind. "If you won't tell me, I'll find out myself." Back at home, Makoto was already gone from the villa. Willow didn't care. She locked herself in the study. She ordered her assistant to investigate George's whereabouts, and that still didn't feel like enough. She began calling all her friends one by one. When her friends heard she was looking for George, they were shocked. In their eyes, George was just Willow's simp, a desperate one at that, and one who never even got the girl. No matter how they questioned her, Willow only repeated her request for help. In the end, they agreed. After exhausting all possible contacts, Willow finally put down her phone. She knew it wouldn't be that quick, but she still stared at her phone without blinking. When a friend asked why she was so desperate to find George, she gave no answer, only repeated the request for help. Once she had calmed down, confusion set in. Why was she so angry? Her gaze drifted to George's old phone. She picked it up and turned it on. Deep down, there was a sliver of hope she hadn't even noticed. She still didn't believe that George had never liked her, not even a little. But when she opened his notes, even that faint hope was extinguished. George had written very few memos. The first one dated back to when the contract was signed. "Thank you, Mr. Liu, for giving me this opportunity. I can finally save you." The second was on their wedding day. "This house is huge and so empty. I'll do my best. Alicia, wait for me." The third note was from 6 months into the marriage. "Alicia now has a treatment plan. Miss Liu isn't that hard to deal with." The fourth was written a year after the wedding. "Miss Liu's first love came back. Every day feels like a nightmare, but Alicia is recovering." The last entry, written 5 days ago. "Only 5 more days and it'll all be over. I'll finally be able to see Alicia again." There were only a few entries, but every single one overflowed with care for someone named Alicia. Willow stared at the phone screen like she could burn a hole through it. Her eyes began to sting. Finally, she turned off the phone and made up her mind. She had to find George and ask him in person. Night fell. Willow didn't turn on the lights. She sat in the dark, recalling the past year. With each memory, she realized how awful she had been. Suddenly, her thoughts returned to the day Makoto claimed George had pushed him. She had been too blinded by anger to look into it, but thinking back now, the whole thing seemed full of suspicious details. A faint suspicion rose in her heart. She pulled up the surveillance footage from the stairs that day. As soon as the video played, Willow saw it clearly. Makoto had fallen down the stairs on his own. George hadn't even laid a finger on him. Realizing what she had done to George because of that misunderstanding, an unbearable pain shot through her chest. Clutching her chest, she didn't even have time to process the emotion. Rage instantly took over her mind. Makoto had dared to play her like a fool. Chapter 10. She took out her phone and dialed Makoto's number. On the other end, he had no idea of the fury in her voice and was still sweet-talking with a pout, complaining about Willow's attitude that morning. He said, "Oh, so you finally remember to call me? I didn't even eat breakfast today. You need to coax me." Willow coldly interrupted him. "Did George really push you yesterday?" Makoto paused in surprise, his tone suddenly taking on a hurtful edge. He said, "Of course he did. My knee still hurts." "Heh." That cold laugh from Willow made him fall silent instantly. Willow said, "Still lying to me? I've seen the surveillance footage. You clearly fell on your own." Makoto panicked for a second and blurted out in denial, "No, I didn't. He pushed me, I swear." "Willow, you have to believe me." Knowing she wouldn't get the truth from him, Willow hung up the phone without another word. She saved the surveillance footage to her phone and drove straight to Makoto's house. Bang bang bang. Violent knocking slammed against the door. Only then did Makoto start to feel scared. He gripped his phone tightly, staring anxiously at the front door. but the person outside didn't let up. The knocking grew even louder and more aggressive. "Makoto, open the damn door, or I'll tear it down." Afraid that she might actually do it, Makoto finally opened the door. The moment he did, Willow strode inside in big steps, forcing Makoto to back up a couple of steps in fear. With the light behind her, Willow's eyes were sharp and cold as she stared at him, pulling out her phone to play the surveillance footage. Makoto hadn't expected her to actually go watch the footage. Panic flickered in his eyes. He turned his head away, only for Willow to grab his jaw and jerk it back forcefully. Just like that, he watched himself frame George from beginning to end. When the video ended, Willow gripped his jaw even harder, forcing his head up. She leaned down, staring at him with dangerous intensity. "Still want to lie to me?" With that, she threw him violently to the floor. Makoto felt pain shoot through his whole body. His eyes turned red, and he looked up at Willow with grievance, hoping, like always, that she'd soften out of pity. He said, "Willow, I just love you too much. You know that, don't you? If it weren't for him standing between us, we'd probably already be married. He's the real obstacle." But Willow was completely unmoved. Her tone was icy, chilling to the bone. She said, "No matter what, George is my husband, and you think you can touch him? You're disgusting." Ignoring Makoto's struggling, Willow dragged him back to the villa. She brought him to the same closet where George had once been locked up and shoved him in without hesitation. Willow said, "Whatever George endured, you should suffer it too." She locked the closet door, but didn't leave. Willow sat down on the bed directly across from the closet, listening to Makoto's shouting and the frantic pounding from inside. In an instant, she felt like she was back in last night's moment, but she had left right after locking George inside. Did George also cry out and bang on the door like this, with no one responding to him? Was that why he avoided her when she tried to hug him later? Was that why he said those things? A sharp, ripping pain tore through her chest without warning, threatening to crush her, but she kept listening, almost like a form of self-inflicted punishment. She had locked him in at night, and by the time dawn broke, she finally moved her stiff limbs from where she had been sitting against the bed frame. There was no more noise from the closet. Willow didn't rush to open it. Instead, she picked up her phone and called her assistant. When she got the answer that there were no new updates, Willow felt a deep sense of disappointment. After hanging up, she opened the closet door. Makoto was already asleep, or maybe had passed out. Willow didn't touch him. She made a call and summoned 2 bodyguards. She said, "Dump him at the front door of the Ito family's house. And tell Mr. Ito this, keep your son on a leash." Chapter 11. After everything was done, Willow stood in the empty room, feeling an overwhelming sense of loneliness. She had never felt the house was empty before, but now it felt hollow. Was it just because George was gone? She didn't dare to dwell on the thought, and instead threw all her efforts and manpower into searching for him. But George seemed to have vanished. Days went by, and there was no news of him at all. Gradually, Willow began to resent the house without George in it. She started living in the bar, using alcohol to fall asleep. It didn't take long for her friends to find out that she was drowning herself in alcohol at the bar every day. Worried she might do something reckless, they came to keep her company. She didn't drive them away, only kept drinking glass after glass. 4 days, she drank heavily, and soon enough, she was completely drunk. One friend, unable to hold back their curiosity, asked while she was drunk, "Willow, we're all really curious. Why are you going through so much trouble to look for George? He's gone, so let him go. It's not like you ever liked him anyway." Hearing that, Willow put down her glass. Her eyes flashed with rage, and she snarled, "He lied to me. He's been lying to me all along. He never liked me at all." That one sentence dropped like a bomb. They all knew how much of a simp George had always been for Willow. To hear her say that George didn't like her left them completely stunned. But before they could ask more, they noticed something even more shocking. Willow was crying. She choked out, "He never liked me. He didn't love me." Willow sat on the couch, the fierceness in her eyes turning into sorrow, into grievance. Tears slid down her cheeks. She looked like someone whose heart had been broken, and everyone around her was utterly taken aback. But after saying those few words, Willow buried her face and continued drinking. None of her friends dared to question her again, though suspicions were already taking root in their hearts. That night, seeing how completely drunk she was, they brought her back home, only to discover that there wasn't even a single housekeeper there. As they hesitated over whether to take Willow to one of their homes instead, she suddenly began waving them off. She said, "You all go home. George will take care of me." The door slammed shut in their faces. Outside, the group exchanged puzzled looks. How could someone who had already left still take care of her? But in the end, they left. As soon as Willow entered, she began shouting at the top of her lungs, "George, I'm drunk, come take care of me." Her voice echoed through the villa, but no one answered. Willow started walking through the huge house, calling George's name as she looked for him. Eventually, she ended up in the garden, staring at the barren ground. Her voice was filled with confusion. Hey, George, where are your flowers? Didn't you plant the whole yard full of them? Why are they all gone? The only response was the howling wind. Her mind slowly began to clear, and she remembered George had already left her. Grief surged in like a tidal wave. For a moment, the pain of losing George washed over and drowned out her anger at being deceived. Willow collapsed to her knees on the dirt, burying her head in her palms, her tears soaking into them. She choked out, "George, why did you lie to me? After lying to me, how could you just leave like that? Why did you walk away so easily? Don't go, George." She rambled on incoherently until eventually she leaned against the garden fence and fell asleep just like that. She woke up in the hospital, with an 4 needle in her hand. Beside her bed sat Mrs. Lou, and on the sofa nearby was Martin. Seeing her wake, Martin only gave her a bland glance, but Mrs. Lou immediately came closer and said, "Daughter, you're finally awake. I went to your house this morning and found you passed out in the garden, burning up with a fever. You scared me half to death." Only then did Willow understand what had happened. She wasn't someone who blacks out from drinking, so she remembered everything from the night before. She remembered crying in the bar, and she remembered kneeling in the garden, begging George not to leave. Now, Willow could no longer deceive herself into thinking she only hated George without even realizing it. Her love for him had taken root long ago, and now, looking back, it had grown into a towering tree, but the one person who should have seen it bloom was already gone. Chapter 12. Mrs. Lou looked at her daughter's silent expression and felt a sharp ache in her heart. She said, "You were calling George's name the whole time you were unconscious. I had no idea you already liked him this much. If I'd known, I would never have let him go." Willow looked out the window and said softly, "You couldn't have stopped him." Yes, someone like him, who could endure 2 years of silent suffering just to save another person, without any resentment. How could he be stopped by hardship, especially when she herself was that very hardship? But still, she didn't want to let him go just like that. Willow pulled her gaze away from the window and looked at her mother by the bed, her eyes rarely showing a trace of pleading. She said, "Mom, tell me where he is. I won't mess things up this time, I'm begging you." It was the first time she had ever begged her for anything. As a child, no matter what it was, she would stubbornly do it herself. But now, she was pleading for George. Mrs. Lou's heart ached for her daughter, but she truly didn't know where George was. So she turned to Martin, who was in the back handling work. Hearing the request, Martin glanced at Willow indifferently and snorted through his nose. He said, "If you liked him so much, what were you doing before? Only now that he's gone you think about holding him back. Mr. Wong specifically asked me not to reveal his whereabouts when he left. That means he doesn't want to see you. Since you're so capable, go find him yourself," Mrs. Lou said. "How can you be so heartless to your own daughter? If you know, why not just tell her?" Martin replied, "She needs to grow up. The consequences she created, she has to deal with herself." There was no softness in Martin's tone. Mrs. Lou looked back at Willow on the hospital bed, full of worry. Willow said nothing, only turned her head toward the window. Deep inside, she made a silent vow. "I will find George. On the other side of the world." I was at the hospital with my sister Alicia for a follow-up. The day I left the Lou family's old house, I boarded a plane to Country F. As soon as I exited the airport, I saw someone waiting to pick me up. They took me to a rehab clinic and filled me in on Alicia's condition along the way. At the clinic, the doctor told me Alicia was in another room doing physical rehab, and asked me to wait. The wait left me completely on edge. I couldn't settle down until I heard that voice, "Bro." I looked toward the doorway. Alicia was striding over and threw herself into my arms. We hadn't seen each other in 2 years. Though Alicia had spent most of that time in bed, she had still grown a lot. Now a young woman, she was surprisingly strong. The injuries I got from being dragged out by Willow hadn't healed yet, and I winced, backing off with a hiss. Alicia immediately let go and caught sight of the red marks on my wrist. She asked, "What happened? Who hurt you?" I tugged my sleeve down to hide it and, eyes reddening, shook my head in front of the only family I had left. No one hurt me. As long as she was getting better, everything I suffered was worth it. We hugged for a long time and talked until night fell. I didn't leave until it was dark. Since Alicia hadn't fully recovered and couldn't be discharged yet, I rented a place near the clinic. I brought her meals every day. A month passed like that, and finally, Alicia was able to leave the clinic, though she still had to return once a week for checkups. After her discharge, we lived together. It felt like childhood again. Those days were full of joy, and I was content with life as it was. Meanwhile, Willow was still tirelessly searching for George. Nearly half a month passed without any trace of him. Only when a friend asked if he might be abroad did she shift her focus overseas. While she was frantically searching, the Ito family suddenly stormed into her office with Makoto in tow. Willow leaned back in her chair, coldly watching them. Ito Sr. stood on the opposite side, clearly displeased. You locked Makoto in a closet last time. Now he's terrified of the dark. You owe us an explanation. Willow's gaze skipped past Ito Sr. and landed on Makoto behind him. Feeling her eyes on him, Makoto instinctively shrank back. She sneered. Why don't you ask your precious son what he did first? Ito Sr. laughed dismissively. So he toyed with some low-class hillbilly. Why make such a big deal? That George was just a filthy, worthless man. He's nothing compared to my son. His words dripped with contempt. Willow's expression gradually turned icy. She called security without hesitation and had them thrown out, completely disregarding their dignity. From that day on, all of C-City knew the Liu family and the Ito family were officially at odds. In the business world, anywhere the Liu family was present, the Ito family was shut out. The Ito family assumed that Makoto's framing of George had caused Willow to retaliate. It wasn't until one day, when Martin thought she was going too far and casually brought it up, that Willow made a call to Makoto. She said, "You and your whole family better remember this. If you ever insult George again, it won't just be business suppression next time." Makoto stared at the phone that had been hung up, his nails digging deep into his palm. Love and hatred tangled in his eyes. Chapter 13. After that, Willow stopped her retaliation against the Ito family and refocused entirely on searching for George. A few days later, she finally found a trace of him in Country F and immediately bought the soonest flight over. The day Willow arrived in Country F, I happened to be at a follow-up appointment with my sister. The doctor said her recovery was going very well. She might not even need another follow-up after the next one. I was overjoyed and took my sister out for dinner that evening. While we were eating, Alicia asked the question she'd clearly been holding back. She was worried I might have done something exhausting or dangerous to earn money for her sake. She asked, "Bro, where did you get so much money?" When I left that day, Martin had given me a considerable sum, so I wasn't surprised Alicia had doubts now. I felt no shame. After all, it was money I deserved, but that didn't mean I was going to tell my sister the truth. I said, "I joined someone on a big project and made quite a bit." Maybe it was the bond we'd had since we were kids, but she could tell I was lying. Still, she didn't call me out on it. After dinner, we headed back to the apartment we'd rented, only to see someone completely unexpected downstairs. I froze mid-step. Beside me, Alicia also stopped in confusion. Following my gaze, she spotted a tired-looking woman not far away. Willow had seen her too. The lights downstairs in the complex were bright enough for her to recognize the girl she'd seen in George's hospital room video that day. Back then, George had told her it was a college classmate he hadn't spoken to in years. But now, she realized it wasn't just a college classmate. This was the person George had stayed beside for 2 years, to save. In a flash, Willow remembered the words George had left in his memo. No matter who read them, it was obvious their relationship wasn't simple. Jealousy surged through her chest. Willow strode up to me, her voice rough and accusing. "Who is she? You lied to me because of her, didn't you?" I was stunned. I never thought Willow would actually come here. My silence made Willow's chest ache. She grabbed my wrist tightly and shouted, "George, say something." Alicia, watching the scene unfold, got angry too. She pushed Willow away and didn't hold back. She said, "What is wrong with you? You're hurting him." As the two were about to start arguing, I sighed and patted Alicia on the back. "Alicia, go upstairs first, but be good. Just go up." Reluctantly, Alicia went upstairs, turning back every few steps. Willow watched her with a fierce glare as she left. Once Alicia was out of sight, I finally spoke. "How did you find me?" That question reminded Willow of how George had asked her father not to reveal his location when he left. Her eyes instantly reddened with anger. She bit her lip and said, "Don't worry, my dad didn't tell me. I found you myself. If he hadn't refused to say anything, I wouldn't have had to search for you for so long. Do you really not want to see me at all?" I couldn't understand where her sudden anger was coming from. I looked at her indifferently and said with a blank expression, "You should already know, our contract ended. There's nothing between us now." Willow stared hard at me and shouted hoarsely, "I never signed the divorce agreement. We're not divorced yet." I paused slightly. I really hadn't expected that. But even then, it was only a moment of surprise. I said, "Whether you signed or not has nothing to do with me. I already did. You don't need to make a scene. It won't change anything. Just a few short sentences." But I remained calm the whole time, like I had been through every moment of those 2 years. In contrast, Willow's emotions were out of control. She realized it herself, and the grief in her heart only deepened. She said, "You lied to me. You lied to me for 2 years." There was so much sorrow in Willow's voice that I was briefly stunned. In that moment, I realized that from a certain perspective, I had indeed deceived her. The husband she thought had loved her deeply was just someone brought in by her parents, with hidden interests at stake. I said, "For lying to you, I apologize." "I'm sorry." Willow hadn't expected me to apologize so easily. She looked up suddenly, her eyes full of heartbreak. She said, I don't want an apology. I don't want you to say sorry, I asked. Then what do you want? She replied. I want you to stay by my side. I frowned. Willow kept going, placing her hands on my shoulders, looking up at me as she said, I want you to stay with me like before, but this time, I won't be so selfish. Willow, stop this. Go home. I brushed her hands off my shoulders and went upstairs without looking back. I didn't take Willow's words to heart. I simply thought she was just having trouble adjusting to the loss of someone who had always obeyed her every command. Chapter 14. After going upstairs, it came as no surprise that Alicia started interrogating me. Who was that woman? Why did she say you lied to her? She sat across from me, brows furrowed. That woman from downstairs clearly wasn't just anyone. Alicia didn't know what kind of people her brother had gotten involved with during the years she'd been in a coma, but she was truly scared there might be danger, so she pressed for answers. I knew where her concern came from, but this wasn't something she could know about. Otherwise, something that was already in the past would only bring pain to another person again. That was the last thing I wanted. So once again, I brushed it off. I said, someone I know. We had a misunderstanding that we haven't sorted out yet. Alicia wasn't satisfied and went back to her room without another word. Looking at her tightly shut door, I let out a long sigh. The next morning, I knocked on Alicia's door, which hadn't opened once since yesterday. I'm sorry. Okay, come out and have breakfast. Not even 2 seconds later, the door opened. Alicia pouted and said, you worked so hard to help me recover all these years. I was just worried about you. Seeing that familiar childhood expression, my heart softened completely. I said, I know. I'll tell you everything, just give me a little more time. Okay. Whether I told her or not, Alicia would never really stay mad at me. So in the end, she agreed. The doctor said she needed to go outside and get more sun. After breakfast, I took her out. We went to the nearest park, but at that moment, Willow was already trailing behind us. She stared at the men she loved just steps away, and the person beside him that she couldn't stand. Her eyes were red with jealousy. Though the envy drove her mad, she still stayed in the shadows, not daring to take a step forward. For the entire day, she watched as we strolled through the park, chatting and laughing. Then we went grocery shopping. Finally, we returned to the same home together. Even when night fell, Willow didn't leave. She stood outside George's building, staring up at the lit windows, shadows dancing behind the curtains. Suddenly, she saw a tall silhouette bending down close to a shorter one, their heads touching like they were kissing. In an instant, jealousy and rage devoured her rationality. A plan formed in Willow's mind. She didn't linger. She was afraid of seeing something she couldn't bear. She almost couldn't stop herself from rushing up there to drag George away. But in reality, Alicia and I had just been moving boxes. I had no idea what was about to happen. Willow only showed up that one time. I thought she had gone back and didn't take it to heart. 2 days later, I went out alone to buy groceries. While walking through an alley, a pair of arms suddenly wrapped around me from behind, and then I blacked out. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was Willow sitting by the bed. Looking around, I realized I was in a small villa. It didn't take long to understand what had happened. But even though I'd been kidnapped, I didn't feel the slightest bit of panic. Willow could be unhinged, but she wasn't going to kill me. Seeing me awake, she looked perfectly calm as she asked, thirsty? I'll get you some water. She turned to leave. I said, no need. Let me go back. Willow froze in her tracks. Let you go back? Back to where? Back to that house with her. She suddenly spun around, eyes rimmed with red as she approached me step by step. She said, I'm not letting you go back. You're not getting back together with her. Let me tell you, I'm your only wife, and I'm never signing the divorce papers. Over the past 2 days, Willow had bought this small villa and redecorated it exactly like the one back home. All just so George would feel more comfortable, just so he might have the slightest desire to stay. But George had only glanced around coldly and said he wanted to go back. Back to that woman's house. The fire in her chest turned into pain that felt like knives. She couldn't help but lash out. In that moment, even seeing him angry would have been better than this indifference. But I wasn't angry. I was just a little surprised. Surprised that Willow had kidnapped me just to avoid getting divorced, just to keep me by her side. And so, Willow kept me in that villa. She didn't lock me in a room or tie me up, but the house's doors and windows were all secured, and she was always there, watching me. There was no one else in the villa besides the two of us. Every meal, every dish, was prepared by Willow herself. Before this, I didn't even know she could cook. She had once been the picky, pampered one. Now she had flipped the roles, doing everything she could just to keep me. I'd mentioned leaving several times, but Willow always changed the subject as if she didn't hear. By the 5th day, I started to worry that Alicia would be panicking while searching for me. I stood firmly in Willow's way. I said, Willow, I told you, let me go back. Chapter 15. Willow knew she couldn't escape it, so she stopped in her tracks. She stiffened her neck and looked at me, saying, I can let you go back, if you promise not to divorce me and stay by my side. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving this place. Her words sounded tough, but her expression was one of grievance. I smiled slightly, not taking her threat seriously, like watching a child throw a tantrum. Willow realized this, and panic filled her heart. She could no longer hold up the strong front. Even her posture slouched. She held my hands in hers, her eyes slowly filling with a desperate plea. She said, "George, don't go. Okay, I'll treat you well. Please don't leave, stay with me. I can't live without you." Looking at the once proud Willow now lowering herself in front of me, I felt a trace of sorrow. The abuser had fallen in love with the one she abused. Was this fate playing a cruel joke? The contract was over. We should have gone our separate ways. But then, love showed up. I tried to pull my hand away, using some force, but Willow gripped tightly, not letting go. That resistance alone told her everything she needed to know. My answer. A searing pain tore through her heart. Every breath felt like torture, like she was being cut open with every inhale. Still, she clutched my hand as if it were a lifeline. Then, thinking of everything she had done in the past, she said, "George, I'm sorry. I apologize for everything I did to you. I was horrible, it was all my fault." Willow thought I refused to stay because I still held on to resentment from the past 2 years, so she apologized desperately, hoping I would forgive her. But the truth was, I had already left all those emotions behind the day I walked out of that villa. I replied in a calm voice, "I don't blame you. These 2 years were a transaction. I got what I wanted. You and your family got what you wanted. It was fair." Hearing me sum up 2 years of her life so coldly, as nothing but a fair deal, Willow slowly sank into despair. She thought, if he blamed me, at least it meant he still felt something for me. But if even that's gone, then I truly have nothing left. She said, "No, blame me. Just blame me. Please, don't be indifferent. Give me some emotion, anything. Don't treat me like this." She held onto my hand as if it were a piece of driftwood in the middle of a storm. I let out a light sigh. Back when we first signed the contract, I had feared something like this might happen. But after the first year passed, that fear faded, and once Makoto came back, I had let it go completely. I never thought it would still end up like this. My lips moved, and in the end, all I said was, "I'm sorry." I knew I didn't have to say it, but somehow, I still did. This time, I managed to pull my hand away. I turned and walked out. The moment my hand slipped from her grasp, Willow froze in place. She didn't move for a long time. Her mind was a chaotic mess. She wondered, if only she hadn't treated George the way she had those 2 years, if only she had realized her feelings earlier, would they have fallen in love? Would George still feel something now? Thoughts swirled endlessly in her head, but in the end, it was all pointless. What's done is done. All she could do now was try desperately to win him back. Chapter 16. At dinner that evening, I once again asked her to let me go back. This time, Willow didn't react emotionally like before. She calmly picked at her food with her chopsticks and said, "I'll let you go back, if you break things off with that woman." Willow knew this demand was unreasonable, even childish, but she couldn't stand the thought of me living under the same roof with another woman. Hearing her say that, I paused for a moment with my chopsticks midair. It finally dawned on me, was she seriously holding this much hostility toward Alicia? I hadn't thought much of it before, but now I finally realized what she'd misunderstood. I explained. "Did you misunderstand something? Alicia is my sister, my biological sister." I made sure to stress the word biological. Now it was Willow's turn to freeze, but rather than feeling awkward for the misunderstanding, she actually looked relieved. Her eyes lit up with joy. She looked up at me with focus, and her tone was earnest. "George, would you consider giving me a chance? I'll take good care of both of you. I'll treat Alicia like my own sister." Facing what could only be described as a confession, I remained unmoved. Those 2 years had been a mistake from the start. There was no need to continue it. I responded firmly. "Stop this. Just let me go back." This time, Willow didn't refuse, because she knew keeping me here wouldn't change anything. After dinner, she drove me back to my rented apartment. Downstairs, we unexpectedly ran into Alicia, who had been searching for me for days. The moment Alicia saw me getting out of Willow's car, she instantly understood who had taken me these past few days. Fury erupted inside her. She stormed forward, yanked me behind her, and slapped Willow hard across the face. "You bastard! What the hell did you take my brother away for?" Willow's cheek immediately flared with heat. The blow had knocked her head slightly to the side, but she wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth without care. Eyes locked on me with intensity as she said, "George, think about what I said. I'm not messing around, and I'm going to seriously pursue you." Seeing Willow still daring to speak to me in front of her, Alicia was ready to throw another round of slaps. I quickly held her back and said, "Enough, Alicia." "I'm fine." Alicia stopped reluctantly, shooting Willow a furious glare before dragging me upstairs. Once we got home, Alicia circled around me several times, checking me from head to toe. I couldn't help but laugh and said, "Alicia, I'm really fine." Only then did she stop. I walked into the apartment, but from behind, Alicia suddenly asked, "Bro, what's the deal between you and that woman?" I froze in place. Her voice was already trembling with tears. She said, "I've been in a coma for years. You never wanted to tell me how hard things were for you. And I didn't push you because I thought I should just go along with it. But when you disappeared these last few days, do you know how scared I was? I don't want to be in the dark anymore. I've grown up now, bro." Her words hit me hard. I had always seen Alicia as a child I needed to protect, but I had forgotten she had grown up. I sighed and pulled her onto the couch to sit down. Then I slowly told her about the past 2 years. When it came to the things Willow had done to me, I glossed over them, not going into detail. Only now did I realize, even I didn't want to remember those 2 years. No matter how much I'd convinced myself it was just a transaction, those years had still left a mark on my life. By the time I finished, Alicia's face was covered in tears. She had known I'd suffered to help her heal, but she never imagined it had been like that. Seeing her cry, I gently patted her head like I used to when we were little and said, "It's all right. It's over now. You're awake, and that's all that matters. Yes, it's all in the past now. I no longer live under Willow's orders. I've finally and completely left that place behind." Chapter 17. The next morning, just as I stepped out the door, I felt myself bump into something. Looking down, I saw it was a bouquet of flowers. There was a card inside. I picked it up and saw that it was written in Chinese, and had my name on it. I immediately knew who sent it. Only then did I understand what Willow meant yesterday when she said she would seriously pursue me. At that moment, a hand suddenly reached from behind and took the flowers. Alicia said, "Bro, I'll go throw this away for you." I didn't think much of it. I just told her to come back right after. But Willow hadn't left after placing the flowers. She was sitting in her car downstairs and clearly saw Alicia walking toward the trash bin with the bouquet she had left. Even though it was Alicia who threw it away, Willow knew I must have allowed it. Otherwise, Alicia wouldn't have done it so casually. Still, she clenched her back teeth as she watched Alicia. If it weren't for her, Willow stopped the thought. If it weren't for her, George would have come back to me. The realization cut deep. She lowered her head and leaned against the steering wheel, heart aching like it was being torn apart. But Willow didn't give up just because of this. Every morning, she continued leaving a fresh bouquet at my door. She remembered the flowers I used to grow in the garden back home. Each day, she rotated between the varieties I had planted. I eventually noticed this, and was a little surprised. There had been at least 5 kinds of flowers in that garden. I had always assumed Willow never paid attention to them. I never imagined that not only had she noticed them, she'd remembered them all. Even so, the flowers ended up in the trash every day, courtesy of Alicia. From the first time she saw Willow, Alicia had disliked her. After Willow took me away, and especially when she found out what Willow had done to me during those 2 years, her dislike deepened into hatred. Willow delivered the flowers enthusiastically every day. Alicia tossed them away with just as much enthusiasm. One night, I was watering the plants on my balcony when my phone suddenly buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "George, look up." Just those few words. But instinctively, I looked up. The moment I did, a beautiful firework burst into bloom right in front of my eyes. Its glow cast shadows across my face. People walking along the street stopped in their tracks, looking up at the sky in awe. Another message came through. "Isn't it beautiful?" My hand tightened unconsciously around my phone. It really was the most beautiful firework I had ever seen. But I didn't reply. The fireworks continued outside, exploding again and again in the sky. And yet, I had already turned and walked away. Fireworks were beautiful, but they couldn't heal everything. I didn't want to get entangled in anything complicated again. I just wanted a simple life now. These past few days, although Willow had constantly been sending me things, she never showed up in front of me, so I treated it all with indifference. One evening, after dinner, I went for a walk by the sea. That was one thing I loved about this city. It was by the ocean. I had grown up deep in the mountains, and had only ever seen the sea online. I had never actually stood before it, so after coming here, I often took walks along the shore. My route was almost always the same. I knew every part of the scenery by heart, but this time, I saw something different. From a distance, it looked like a proposal setup. The whole area was covered in flowers. A person stood in the center. As I got closer, I realized it was Willow. I stopped walking, stunned for a moment. Chapter 18. Willow held a bouquet in her hands, walking toward me step by step. Her hands trembled slightly from nervousness. When she reached me, she offered the flowers and looked at me with hopeful eyes. "George, I really like you. I truly love you. I'm sorry for everything I did in the past. I really regret it. Please, give me a chance to make it up to you. I'll treat you well. I even bought a huge piece of land back in Sea City. If you want to grow flowers, you can plant them there. If you don't want to, I can hire someone to do it." As soon as she finished speaking, Fireworks exploded in the sky above the sea. The rumbling echoed around us, and countless drones flew into formation, spelling out words of love directed at me. It was without a doubt a grand, extravagant confession. People by the shore all cheered loudly, and Willow and I stood in the center of it all. I withdrew my gaze from the sky full of drones and looked back at the woman in front of me. Under her expectant eyes, I slowly opened my mouth. Willow, that's enough. Don't say any more. Let's just end it here. I don't need your apology. The light in Willow's eyes gradually dimmed. Her hand, frozen midair, slowly dropped. She lowered her head and gave a bitter smile. You can't do this, George. You can't turn away from me now, not when I can't let you go. I cut her off. Willow, at the end of the day, I don't owe you anything. If it's about lying to you, then the things you did to me these past 2 years, don't they more than make up for it? Willow's body stiffened. Yes, George didn't owe her anything, and it was precisely because she knew that so clearly, that she had always lived in a panic laced with hopelessness, but she still couldn't bring herself to let go. I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. George, hit me, please. I won't dodge. If it'll help you vent your anger, I'll accept anything you do. Willow grabbed my hand and tried to swing it toward her face. Just before it landed, I forcefully pulled my hand away. Frowning, I looked at the person in front of me, who now seemed to be losing her grip on reality. You don't need to do this. You don't owe me anything either. We're from different worlds. I was only ever in your life because of a contract, because of personal interests. I just stayed in your world for a while. But in the end, we have to go back to our own. But I don't want that. Willow looked up at me, her eyes red, filled with obsession. I don't want us to go back to living separate lives. I want to return to the days when it was just the two of us. I'll do everything I can to fit into your world. Her expression startled me for a second. After a moment, I shook my head gently and said in a soft voice, that's not possible. I don't want to go back to that life. Just then, a voice called from the distance, bro. I turned and saw Alicia approaching, her expression not looking good. Before she could get too close, I walked over to her and left one final sentence behind. Go home, Willow. Don't come looking for me again. With that, I turned and left decisively, blocking Alicia, who was clearly annoyed at Willow. I said, come on, let's go home. Alicia didn't cause Willow any more trouble. She followed me home. After we returned, I thought I'd made myself perfectly clear. Knowing Willow, with her pride, I figured she wouldn't show up again. But I still underestimated her. Not only was she undeterred, just a day later, she resumed sending flowers and gifts. When I took Alicia for her follow-up appointment, Willow was already waiting downstairs, saying she wanted to drive us. She was so eager and cheerful. It was as if that grand confession and emotional exchange by the sea had never happened at all. Naturally, I refused her offer. I called a cab and went to the hospital. After a full round of checks, the doctor said Alicia was recovering well and no longer needed follow-ups. That meant we no longer had to stay in this foreign country. That very night, Alicia and I discussed returning home. Alicia, of course, agreed. We booked tickets to fly back the next day at noon, but we didn't return to Sea City. We went straight back to our hometown. After landing, we took a 2-hour bus ride before finally arriving. Standing in front of the old courtyard gate, I truly felt like I was home. Even if the place had fallen into disrepair from years of being unoccupied, we dropped our things and started cleaning up the house right away. At the same time, Willow had no idea we had left. Chapter 19. Because of work, Willow missed a day and didn't wait outside George's building. The next day, when she came to drop off flowers, she saw yesterday's bouquet still sitting by the door. Usually, Alicia would throw the flowers away immediately. But now, a whole day had passed and they were still there. Willow felt confused. Though she assumed George was just using this silent treatment to try and push her away, she picked up the old bouquet, replaced it with a new one, and headed back downstairs. She squatted outside the building the whole day. Only when evening came did Willow realize something was off. No one had left the apartment all day, and by nightfall, no lights were on inside. A strange panic began to rise in her chest. She quickly got out of the car and ran upstairs, banging hard on the door. She wasn't being gentle. If anyone were sleeping inside, they should have heard her by now. But no matter how long she knocked, no one came to open the door. Just then, the neighbor across the hall opened their door, clearly disturbed by the noise. In English, they said, "What are you knocking for? The people here left with their luggage yesterday." Without waiting for a reply, the neighbor slammed the door shut, leaving Willow standing frozen in place. The motion sensor light went out. Only then did she snap out of it and frantically pull out her phone to call George. After she'd found his number before, she had only sent 2 messages. This was the first time she dialed it, but all she heard was a recorded message: "The phone has been turned off." George had switched back to a domestic SIM card after returning to China, so of course he couldn't receive the call, but Willow didn't know that. She only thought George had run away again, to avoid her. The cold automated voice repeated over and over. Willow's hand clutched the phone tightly as darkness engulfed her. George had left her again. Willow repeated that phrase in her mind, over and over. The pain in her chest pricked like needles, dense and suffocating. She didn't know how much time had passed before she finally called her assistant. Find George again, and do it fast. Hearing his boss's lifeless voice, the assistant was startled. He didn't dare ask more and immediately agreed. 2 days later, the assistant found George's location and updated Willow. When she saw the address, she finally let out a breath of relief. She recognized it as George's hometown. It meant he wasn't hiding from her, he had just gone home. Without a moment's delay, she booked the earliest ticket and rushed over. Nearly 10 hours of exhausting travel vanished the moment she saw George sitting in the courtyard, basking in the sun. I hadn't expected her to find this place. There was a flash of surprise in my eyes. Willow couldn't hold back her excitement. She ran over and wrapped her arms around me. George, I finally found you. Please don't leave without saying anything again. I really can't take it. I tried to break free from her embrace. Sensing it, Willow only held me tighter. It wasn't until I said coldly, "Let go of me," that she finally, reluctantly, let go. I asked, "What are you doing here?" Hearing the distance in my tone, Willow stepped back to a safe distance. The excitement in her heart began to settle. She said, "I told you, I'll become part of your world," and I meant it. Looking at the stubborn determination in her eyes, I felt a slight headache coming on. But before I could say anything, Alicia returned. "You again. How did you find this place? What do you want?" She quickly stepped in front of me, shielding me, and glared at Willow. Willow didn't argue. She just looked at me deeply before turning and walking away. Alicia followed her out of the courtyard. Once she confirmed Willow had really left, she came back to me and said, "Bro, did she do anything to you? That lunatic actually tracked you all the way out here." I patted her to calm her down, shook my head helplessly, and looked out beyond the gate in thought. Even though Willow hadn't said much before leaving, I didn't believe she would give up so easily. And I was right. Willow hadn't left. Or rather, she never intended to. After that night at the beach, she had thought a lot. She realized that what stood between her and George wasn't just love or the lack of it, it was 2 years of hurt. So she was willing to accept how hard it would be to chase him now, and to endure all of his coldness. After leaving George's place, she parked her car at the village entrance to avoid being seen. Then she waited in the car until dark, before returning quietly to the courtyard. Chapter 20. We were having dinner outside in the courtyard when Willow arrived. We saw her the moment she showed up. Alicia was the first to stand up and question her. "What are you doing here again?" I tugged on her arm, and only then did she sit back down, but her eyes remained warily fixed on Willow. Willow didn't mind. She walked closer and looked at me as she said, "It's too late now. There's no way out of the village tonight. I don't have a place to stay. Can I stay here for the night?" Looking at the sky outside, it was indeed too late for any transportation, and there certainly weren't any inns in this village. After thinking for a moment, I agreed. Willow's face lit up with joy, but when she heard what I said next, the excitement quickly faded. I said, "You can stay for one night, but once morning comes, you leave." I insisted she promise before letting her stay. Left with no other choice, she agreed. Alicia led her to the guest room but added a warning before leaving. "You better not try anything sneaky. I won't let it slide." Willow didn't take it seriously at all. The night passed. The next morning, after I washed up, I headed to the kitchen, and there was Willow, already inside. She glanced back at me and said, "Breakfast is almost ready. George, go wake Alicia." Her tone was so casual, so natural, it stunned me into silence. I turned to find Alicia standing at the door too, looking just as conflicted. At that moment, Willow carried a bowl out and placed it on the table, even calling out to us cheerfully, "Come eat. It's my first time making this. Try it and tell me if it's good." Both Alicia and I sat down in a daze, picking up our chopsticks and eating the noodles in silence, filled with suspicion. Alicia might not have felt it that deeply, but I definitely did. Was this even the same Willow? The Willow I knew had never cooked for anyone, never taken care of anyone. She only ever ordered people around. But now here she was, naturally making breakfast for us. After the meal, before I could even open my mouth to tell her to leave, she had already picked up the dishes and walked back into the kitchen to wash them. Once she finished washing, I called out, ready to tell her to leave, but she simply glanced at me and turned to find Alicia, who was working in the garden. She said, "Let me help you." I couldn't say anything more. Alicia seemed to treat it as a competition, doing even more work than Willow just to prove a point. Because of this silent rivalry, the garden was quickly taken care of. Now there was nothing left to do. I walked over to Willow and said, "You can leave now," she replied. "I'll go fetch water." And just like that, she grabbed a bucket and walked toward the well. By the time evening came again, I found myself too embarrassed to kick her out, so Willow stayed another night. This continued for 3 days. One day, I went to the small shop in the village to buy supplies. When I paid, the shopkeeper smiled and said, "George, you brought back a good girlfriend, pretty and hardworking too." I didn't want to explain. I just gave a forced laugh and went home. When I got there, I saw Willow working in the field in front of the house. Watching the once spoiled heiress now tilling soil, I felt a strange heaviness in my chest, because she wasn't supposed to be like this. I knew exactly why Willow stayed, but since I couldn't return her feelings, her staying here was just a waste of time. Over the past few days, I had thought countless times about telling her to leave, but every time I tried, she avoided the topic completely. That evening, I didn't let Willow cook. I made the meal myself. I considered this meal the last one I would ever cook for Willow. Some things, when dragged on, never reach a conclusion, and that was something I understood deeply. Chapter 21. But accidents always come without warning. During dinner, Alicia suddenly said she was having trouble breathing and then collapsed. My mind went completely blank. I held her in my arms, frozen, not knowing what to do. It was Willow who reacted first. She told me to help her get Alicia onto her back, and then carried her to the car at the village entrance. We rushed to the county hospital. The entire way, I was in a state of extreme anxiety. Willow drove with one hand and held my hand with the other, trying to calm me down. When we got to the hospital, Willow ran around handling everything. Though I had already composed myself, she still insisted I rest. Eventually, the doctor gave a diagnosis based on her medical history, just overexertion, nothing serious. It wasn't until I heard those words that I truly relaxed. Then came a wave of guilt. How could I have been so careless, letting someone who'd just woken from years of sleep do so much work? Once Alicia was settled into a hospital room, I tucked the blanket around her and stepped out, closing the door behind me. I turned to Willow and said, "Thank you. If it weren't for you, I don't even know how I would have gotten her here." Willow lowered her head slightly and looked at me with a gaze full of affection. "George, I told you I'd take good care of you, and that includes your sister." It was words like these that made me sigh. I truly was grateful for her help in getting Alicia to the hospital, but gratitude only made it more important to help her face reality, not give her false hope. So I replied firmly, "I really am thankful for what you did today, but I also really don't need you to take care of me. I hope you can understand that." The person in front of me stiffened and said nothing for a long while. When I looked up at her with concern, Willow turned away and forced a smile, changing the subject. "I'm going to check on Alicia, she might be waking up." Even though she said it with a smile, the quiver in her voice betrayed the tears she was hiding. She walked into the room without waiting for my response. This was her way of avoiding things, because she'd realized that whenever Alicia was around, I wouldn't talk to her about us. She also knew that avoiding reality wouldn't solve anything, but what she feared more than confrontation was my departure. So all she could hope for was to prolong this fragile illusion of happiness. The next morning, Alicia woke up. As soon as I saw her open her eyes, I burst into tears. Alicia said, "Come on, bro, I'm fine. See, I'm totally fine. Don't cry." After another checkup confirmed everything was okay, we got into Willow's car and returned home. As we entered the courtyard, Alicia walked side by side with Willow. When Willow looked at her in confusion, Alicia simply said, "Thanks." Then she went inside with me. Willow paused for a moment, staring at our backs. Her heart was filled with a bittersweet mix of relief and pain, because she knew this warmth wasn't real. I had never truly accepted her. All of this was something she clung to shamelessly. That night, just as I was about to go to bed, Alicia knocked on my door and came in. I looked at her curiously as she sat down across from me. It took her a while to finally ask the question, "Bro, how do you really feel about Willow?" I was caught off guard. I hadn't expected her to ask that. After thinking for a moment, I decided to be honest. I said, "She and I were never from the same world." Even putting aside feelings, just the 2 years between us, that's already too much to move past. I don't want to dwell on who was right or wrong. I just want to return to my life, free of more complications. I reached out and patted her head, just like I did when we were kids. "But Alicia, I'm just tired. I want to rest. If you ever want to go somewhere, don't hold back. Your big brother will always be behind you." I didn't want my words to limit my younger sister. That's why I said what I did. Alicia understood. Her eyes were red, but she nodded. After leaving my room, she wiped away her tears and turned toward Willow's room. The only reason she asked me that question was to confirm how I felt about Willow. Now that she knew, she was ready to do something for me, on my behalf. Chapter 22. Alicia called Willow out directly, but not to talk inside the house. She didn't want to alarm George. There were no streetlights on the hillside, only the moonlight shining down, but it wasn't so dark that you couldn't see. They sat in silence on the hill for a long time before Alicia finally spoke. "You should go back. Stop clinging to my brother." Willow's expression faltered at those words. It was a while before she finally asked in a hoarse voice, Is that George's decision? The moment she asked the question, she already knew the answer. Alicia didn't like her. That much was clear, but she would never make decisions on George's behalf. So this could only mean George had made his stance clear. Alicia didn't answer the question. She tilted her head back and looked at the moon overhead. When she spoke again, it was something else entirely. My brother lived with you for 2 years. Did you treat him well? Silence. The question hit like a boomerang, coming back to stab Willow in the heart, deep and impossible to pull out. Those 2 years were the time she least wanted to talk about. Every single horrible thing she had done during that time still tore at her soul whenever she remembered them. From her silence, Alicia got her answer. She gave a bitter smile and said, I asked him before about your relationship. He told me everything, but when I brought up what those 2 years were like, he barely said a word. I didn't press him, because I could tell, those 2 years hurt so much he didn't even want to talk about them. And you, the one who caused all that pain, how dare you show your face and ask him to stay? She suddenly stood up and yelled at Willow. Willow instinctively covered her face with her hands, her voice trembling with pain. I'm sorry, I wronged your brother. I know I did terrible things, but I really do love him. I want to make it up to him. Even if it means I have to die, I'd do it. Tears welled in Alicia's eyes. Standing above Willow, who sat in pain and silence, she let out a sarcastic laugh. My brother doesn't need your redemption. You know what he told me today. He said, he's tired. Willow's shoulders stiffened. Alicia continued. He said he's tired and just wants to rest. So please, leave. Your presence only makes him more exhausted. With that, she didn't linger any longer. She turned and went home. Willow didn't move an inch. Her mind kept repeating those words. George is tired. She had imagined George might hate her, or be indifferent, but she never thought her presence alone would make him feel drained. In an instant, she was caught in an impossible place. She sat there all night, on the cold hillside, unmoving. Only when dawn's light crept across the horizon did she shift her legs, numb and aching, and walk back toward the house. Back home, Willow made breakfast. Alicia was the first to wake up the moment she saw Willow in the kitchen. Her brow furrowed, thinking her words last night had been in vain. But Willow said, his birthday is coming soon. I'll celebrate it, and then I'll leave. In the end, Willow compromised. She couldn't bear the thought of being the one making George feel tired, so she chose to cut herself off from her own feelings. And maybe that was the punishment she deserved. I knew nothing about their conversation. All I noticed was that Willow had started spacing out when she looked at me. Whenever I turned toward her, she'd give a small smile, then quickly look away. She had grown quieter. She no longer jumped to do the chores. Instead, she often just sat near me, saying nothing at all. When my birthday arrived, I didn't even realize it was my birthday. 4 years. I had been so consumed with raising money for Alicia's medical bills that I hardly had time to think, let alone celebrate. Then came 2 years of marriage with Willow. Life slowed down, but every day was filled with the effort of enduring her. I had long forgotten my own birthday. Strangely enough, I remembered her birthday clearly, but had completely erased mine. So when I came back from a trip to the town and saw the decorations at home, my first thought was that it must be Alicia's birthday. I didn't realize it was my own. Seeing the confusion on my face, Willow's eyes suddenly turned red. Chapter 23. It wasn't until she walked up to me with the cake in her hands that I realized it was my birthday. Happy birthday, George, she said softly. This is the first birthday I've celebrated for you, and also the last one, she thought to herself. Her heart clenched, but she didn't say that final part aloud. After a brief pause, she continued. I've been a terrible wife in the past, and I've wronged you. Just let me give you a proper birthday this once, okay? Hearing her words, I frowned and started to say, we're not, but she interrupted me. I know everything. You don't have to remind me anymore. Her voice trembled with pleading. I fell silent. Willow set the cake down and picked up a small box. Inside were 2 rings, one for a man, one for a woman. They were clearly expensive, carefully designed. She looked at them and let out a soft laugh. I designed these diamond rings myself. I wanted to put them on you with my own hands. They were just completed yesterday, in time for your birthday. I knew you wouldn't agree to wear them, but I still had this silly hope. I thought maybe, just maybe, if you saw them, you might change your mind. But clearly, I was being delusional. I said nothing, just listened. Willow looked up at me and said, George, can you just do me this one favor? Just wear it for a moment, please? I just want to see it, just once. I promise I won't misunderstand. Seeing her lower herself so much, I softened for a moment and nodded. Willow didn't show much excitement. In fact, she seemed almost resigned as she slipped the ring onto my finger, because she knew this was George's last act of mercy. When the ring finally settled on my finger, something inside Willow snapped. The emotional tension she had been holding since her talk with Alicia completely shattered. Her emotions overpowered her logic. Holding my hand, she begged, George, don't leave me. Please, I'm begging you, don't abandon me. I really can't live without you. I felt her tears soaking my hand. I replied calmly. Willow, no one is indispensable. You lived just fine before I came into your life. What you think is, can't live without me, is just a mental trick you've convinced yourself of. It's not real. It's time to grow up. Go back to your world. This is where we end. Willow bowed her head. Silent. Her shoulders shook, as if she were enduring immense pain. How badly she wanted to keep clinging, to refuse to let go, just so she could continue looking at me, even from afar. But Alicia's words echoed endlessly in her mind. She could love him. She could cling to him, but she couldn't be the reason he felt tired. At the final moment, her reason overpowered her emotion. With trembling hands, she slowly slid the ring off my finger. Okay, I'll do as you say. She had come quietly, and she left the same way. Willow left that night, because she was afraid that if she saw George again, she wouldn't be able to walk away. After returning home, she fell seriously ill and slipped into a coma. Mr. and Mrs. Liu, who hadn't seen their daughter in over a month, rushed to the hospital. The doctors couldn't find anything physically wrong. They could only say her coma was caused by emotional overload. Willow stayed unconscious for 5 days before finally waking up. When she did, she stared blankly at the ceiling. No matter how loudly Mrs. Liu called to her, she didn't respond. Just as Mrs. Liu turned to go get the doctor, Willow finally whispered, "Mom." But her voice was lifeless, like it no longer belonged to someone truly alive, because in her coma, she had been dreaming, a beautiful dream. She dreamed she and George were in a normal relationship. They went back together to the old countryside house and lived happily, until George suddenly said, "I'm tired." Then the dream collapsed, and she woke up. In that moment, she truly wanted to stay asleep forever, but fate, perhaps wanting to punish her, refused to let her escape. After one more day of hospital observation, Willow was cleared for discharge. She didn't let her parents pick her up. She took a cab on her own. Makoto, having heard she was getting out, had been waiting across the street from the hospital. After Willow locked him in the wardrobe that day, he had developed claustrophobia. From then on, he panicked in tight spaces. When his father tried to demand justice from the Liu family and got humiliated instead, the social circles turned on them. Makoto became the laughingstock, not even better than a country bumpkin, they said. He lost his status. His access to the elite world vanished. People trampled on him without hesitation. He had stayed at home in hatred for a month, terrified of going out, terrified of more mockery. Then he heard Willow was back. And finally, he had someone to blame. If not for Willow, he would still be a pampered, respected second-generation heir. Not this joke. He hated her with everything he had. So when he saw Willow exit the hospital and get into a cab, he slammed the gas pedal and rammed into her car. The crash happened in an instant, but because it was near a hospital, the ambulance arrived quickly. Willow barely survived, but Makoto had aimed to kill. She lived, but her right leg was permanently disabled. Willow accepted the result calmly. If her legs were intact, she couldn't promise herself she wouldn't go running to George again in a moment of weakness. Now, that possibility was gone forever. She spent 2 months in the hospital recovering. Makoto was arrested for attempted murder and sentenced. 6 months later, he lost his mind in prison. Willow learned all of this from her mother. She didn't care. She returned to the house she once shared with George. She hired a housekeeper, asked her to buy flower seeds, and began planting them in the garden herself. She worked hard to restore everything to the way it was before George left. As for the rings, one she wore on her finger, and the other she hung on a chain around her neck. Whenever she felt she couldn't go on, she would kiss the one on her necklace, as if kissing him, just once, and she could keep going again. Maybe enough to carry her through the rest of her life.